April 2nd, 2025. In a few moments, I will sign a historic executive order instituting reciprocal tariffs on countries throughout the world.
The top story this
April
evening on
2nd,
India Global. The Trump administration's bold sweeping tariffs on imports from key allies have ignited a global economic firestorm. Allies from Europe all the way to Asia are in fact hitting back with retaliatory duties while the markets continue sliding. Investors fleeing US stocks, fearing a crisis. Tariffs as well could spike prices up to 54%. That's right, up to 54% on everyday goods, shaking industries from auto to retail. The ripple effect? Well, consumer wallets squeezed, supply chain shattered, and global trade teetering on the edge. This is not just a trade war, it's proving to be a tectonic shift in the world economy. And to decode the fine print of these so-called discounted Trump tariffs, Alexander Slater joins us from Washington, D.C. He's the Managing Director of Global Policy Forecasting and Strategy firm Capstone and the former MD of US-India Business Council. We're also joined by Mr. Rajiv Arya, Baker Tilly ASA India's National Accounting and Business Support Head. Thank you so much for taking out the time, gentlemen. On to you, Mr. Slater. How do you assess the long-term impacts of Trump's reciprocal tariffs, especially on India's trade relationship with Washington? Also, do you see this as a temporary challenge, or is it more of a structural shift altogether?
Thanks so much for the question and for having me on to discuss this very important topic today. It's unclear the endurance of this initial move by the Trump administration. Yes, it's true that they have imposed a blanket 10% tariff across 185 countries. It's also true that about 60 of those countries have tariffs above that rate. And while the president has discussed that these tariffs are the result of unfair trade practices, whether they be tariffs or non-tariff trade barriers, it appears that the science, or at least the analysis behind how the administration came to impose specific tariffs on these 60 countries had nothing to do specifically with these trade measures, but had to do with the trade deficit that the United States has in terms of goods with those countries. So as we think through this, it's important to decode what's actually happening here. It seems that the Trump administration has imposed tariffs on countries that are half the rate of the trade deficit, the percentage of the trade deficit that exists between the United States and the other country. And so in India's case, for example, they only looked at the goods trades deficit, and then they divided that by the exports to the United States and came up with the number of 52%, and then divided that by 2 to apply this 26% rate across goods exported from India. Now, again, it's also important to note that these don't come into effect until actually April 9th. The blanket 10% tariff comes on April 5th, and the ultimate reciprocal tariffs come in on April 9th. And so there is time between now and then for India, as well as other countries, to make moves that may allow President Trump, or may convince or persuade President Trump to reduce that amount. So it remains to be seen how enduring this will be. And it certainly looks like, if you take the calculation behind these ostensible reciprocal tariffs at face value, that one way to do that would be by taking steps in the immediate week to reduce the trade deficit.
That's in fact a very important point you raise, Mr. Slater. There is always, there seems to be some wiggle room as the tariffs don't kick in till the 9th of April. But we also know that with Donald Trump, it's always advisable to be prepared for the worst. In fact, taking this to Mr. Arya, what steps should Indian businesses take to mitigate the financial impact of these tariffs if they come to pass? Which does not really seem to be the case in the Trump 2.0 administration, Mr. Arya. Please.
Well, I've always believed that, any adverse situation, if it's adverse, I don't know, but any adverse situation like this is also a reason to be feeling more opportunistic to redo what we have or undo what we have not done well in the past. I think this tariff has been, across the the board to many countries. I don't see why just India is going to be impacted by the whole thing. But having said that, the important thing is, what do we do? What we need to do is really is to reinvent ourselves in terms of efficiencies, in terms of technology usage, in terms of policies. I think India has been lagging on those issues for quite a number of years. Maybe we took too much for granted, and with the world having moved on, this is just an alarm bell to say that it's time to just redefine and redo our strategies to get on top of things and be there that we can absorb these kind of costs very easily. Now, be it about technology, new markets, incentives, get our small and medium enterprises to flourish. All those are measures which are really going to go a very long way to make India very competitive. And as far as these tariffs are concerned, I think they are not going to be there for long. If one president can come and do it, there could be another president who could undo it. But having said that, let's prepare that that doesn't happen. And what do we need to do to fight this? I think we can do a lot.
Very interesting point you raised there. We need to rethink and reshape our policy approach. I'll take that to Mr. Slater. Mr. Slater, now Trump's announcements we've been seeing heavy disruptions worldwide, in fact, in supply chains. Now, what steps are countries and companies actually taking to minimize these risks and also maintain their competitive edge in global markets?
So I just refer to something I was also talking about earlier. If you go back to the inauguration, we came out with a forecast that suggested that we expected President Trump to impose a 10% blanket tariff on all countries, a universal tariff, and then to, in certain cases, impose higher tariffs on countries' goods, as well as initiate product-specific investigations for unfair trade practices. Since then, he's done all of that, and yesterday's move really confirms the 10% universal tariff as well as the higher tariffs on other countries. In terms of responding, there does seem to be the ability for countries, or at least a hint, that countries may be able to avoid the reciprocal tariffs through increasing their purchases of U.S. goods by reducing the trade deficit that they have with the United States. It's not guaranteed. I assume that those are conversations that are happening behind closed doors. But if you look at the way, again, that the Trump administration calculated the ostensible reciprocal tariff rates, it is heavily related to the trade deficit. And the Trump administration looks at the trade deficit as a proxy for unfair trade practices. One of the ways that I think that countries can mitigate this is by increasing their purchases of U.S. goods. That's what I think is the right way forward.
Mr. Arya, I'd like to ask you here, you spoke about finding advantages and using disadvantages to sort of turning them into your advantage. Now, which sectors do you see or could possibly see an unexpected boost despite these challenges?
Across the board. I mean, there is no specific sector. We already have advantage in a few sectors, which is already there. The pharma, anyways, an advantage sector from that point of view. But across the board, I would say, I mean, there is no end to what can be done across the sectors. I mean, our Prime Minister, I remember, said that, we really want to give a boost to the toy sector. I mean, that was a small talk that the Prime Minister has raved and ranted. But what have we done about it? We have not done anything about it. Like that, if I keep adding and counting endless amount of things that we can do, because the amount of resources we have, the amount of talent we have, the amount of ability we have, the advantages as a manufacturing unit.
Advantages all around in all sectors, says Mr. Arya.
All sectors.
I'll need to move on due to paucity of time, but one very quick question for both of you. Do you think that the tariffs will actually be imposed? Will they kick in on the 9th of April? Mr. Slater, quick reply from you. Will they or will they not?
It all depends on what India does behind the scenes over the next week.
Mr. Arya, what do you think?
Yes, for a short while.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen.